The signal from the void. The stars outside the window were quiet. Raylan sat alone in his small spaceship, drifting near the edge of human space. It had been 3 weeks since his last contact with another human. He didn't mind. He liked the silence. Out here, he could breathe. His mission was simple: scan unknown regions, report anything strange, and move on. Most of the time, there was nothing but empty rocks and dead moons. Today seemed no different until the signal came. It was soft at first, a repeating tone, faint, almost like a whisper through space. Raylan sat up straight and frowned. "AI, identify the signal," he said. The ship's voice responded, calm and clear. "Unregistered frequency, not human. Pattern resembles distress call. Source, unknown." Raylan stared at the blinking light on his screen. It was coming from a region labeled unexplored, hazard zone. Most scouts avoided these places. The last team that entered there never came back. "Any danger?" he asked. The AI paused. "Atmosphere on the source planet is highly toxic. Strong biological activity detected. Extreme caution advised." Raylan leaned back in his seat. Every part of his training told him to leave it alone, but his gut said otherwise. If someone, or something, was asking for help, he had to try. "Set course for the signal," he said. The engines roared to life. As the ship turned, the stars shifted and a pale green planet came into view. Its clouds were thick and moved like fog in a nightmare. Even from orbit, Raylan could feel that something was wrong. He suited up and prepared for landing. The ship touched down with a soft thud. Outside, the ground was dark and soft, like it had been soaked in chemicals for centuries. Strange, mushroom-like plants grew in clusters. Every few seconds, they released clouds of green mist into the air. Raylan checked his oxygen levels. The suit was holding, for now. "Signal is close," the AI said in his helmet. He walked toward a large, broken structure half buried in the ground. It looked like a hive. Twisted walls made of some kind of living material. The entrance was cracked open just enough for him to slip inside. Inside, the air was worse. Even with the suit, he could smell the rot. The walls pulsed slightly like they were breathing. There were strange pods on the ground, some broken, some still sealed. He knelt beside one and wiped the surface. Inside, something small and curled twitched in the dark. "Larvae." He stood up quickly. This wasn't just a building, it was a nursery. Suddenly, a soft noise came from deeper inside. It sounded like crying. Not human, but close enough to feel real. Raylan followed the sound, moving carefully. The floor was slippery and the walls were covered in a thin layer of glowing slime. He entered a chamber that looked different. The walls were darker, harder, as if made to protect something. In the center, several small creatures huddled together. Their skin was pale, almost translucent. They were weak, barely able to move. But when they saw Raylan, they looked up. Not with fear, but with hope. "AI, scan life forms," he whispered. "Non-hostile. Oxygen-starved. Severe toxin exposure. Life signs fading." Raylan's chest tightened. He didn't know who they were or where they came from. But he knew one thing: they were dying, and he was the only one who could help. He dropped his bag and began unpacking emergency supplies. He set up a small oxygen dome and activated it. The clean air hissed out, forming a bubble around the larvae. One of them blinked slowly, then made a soft chirping sound. That's when he heard another noise, a low growl from the shadows. Raylan spun around, his hand on his weapon. But it wasn't an enemy. It was something worse. A large alien lay against the far wall, barely alive. Its body was covered in burns. Its breathing was slow and heavy. Unlike the small ones, this one was different. Taller, older. A crown-like growth on its head marked it as something important. A queen. She opened her eyes and looked at Raylan. Not just with sight, but with something more. A wave of emotion hit him: pain, sadness, fear, and hope. She was trying to speak, but not with words. Images flashed in Raylan's mind, of the hive, of peace, of an attack from the sky, the gas, the fire, the death, and finally, the children. She wasn't just asking for help, she was begging him to save the future. Raylan stepped forward slowly. "I'll help," he said. She closed her eyes and her breathing slowed. The hive was dying, but maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to save it. The hive below Raylan stood in silence, staring at the dying queen. Her eyes had closed, but her mind had left something behind. A faint echo of thought, still buzzing inside his head like distant thunder. Images flashed again. Explosions, fire, larvae screaming without sound. He shook his head and blinked, grounding himself in the now. The oxygen bubble was small. It would only last an hour. The alien children inside it looked slightly better but still weak. Some of them hadn't moved in minutes. Raylan looked around. The nursery was deep inside the hive, but he had no idea how large this structure really was. The queen hadn't shown him everything. There were more chambers, more secrets, and more danger. He activated a small flying drone from his belt and sent it into the tunnel ahead. The camera feed lit up in his visor. Darkness, narrow tunnels, webbed walls, strange organic growths pulsing like veins. Then something else. Movement. Something large just out of sight. Raylan gritted his teeth. He had to find a way to protect the children, and to do that, he had to explore deeper. He left the nursery slowly, leaving behind his oxygen purifier and setting a proximity alarm near the larvae. His gun was in his hand now. The tunnels were tight and humid. He moved carefully, scanning every step. The further he went, the stranger the hive became. Some parts looked ancient, covered in black stone and fungus. Other parts looked new, not just repaired but different, as if something else had tried to rebuild the hive after the queen had fallen, something not of her kind. In one chamber, he found broken tools, alien devices, shaped like bone and crystal. Some were scorched, others cracked open as if torn apart. What were they for? Medicine? Defense? Then he found the first body. It was not a queen, not a child, but a soldier. Tall, armored skin, claws like blades, but this one had been pierced through the chest by something sharp and fast. Not gas. A weapon. Raylan crouched beside it. This wasn't a toxin, he said to himself. This was war. The AI confirmed. High velocity. Impact. Non-native weapon, unknown technology. Something killed this hive. Not just poison. An attack. Raylan's stomach turned. He wasn't the first outsider here. He went deeper. The hive opened into a wide chamber. And what he saw froze him in place. Massive tanks lined the walls full of green fluid. Inside them, half-formed creatures floated silently. Some looked like the larvae he had seen, but others didn't. Some had longer limbs, sharper jaws, human-like hands. He stepped closer. One of the tanks was shattered. Fluid spilled across. The floor and the body was gone. Before he could react, the drone feed cut out. Static. Then, a scream. Not human, but close. Raylan spun around, gun raised. Something moved in the shadows above, a scraping sound, a click, then silence again. His heart raced. He backed away from the tanks, moving toward the side tunnel. He had to return to the queen, to the children. But the hive was no longer quiet. It was waking up. Back in the nursery, the queen's breathing was weaker. The children stirred restlessly. Raylan rushed to the purifier. The air supply was still holding, but then, a sharp hiss. The mist was leaking in. Raylan checked the seal. A crack had formed in the wall. The hive was collapsing, its own structure poisoned by the very gas that had been released during the attack. He didn't have time. He turned to the Queen. "You need to show me," he said. "Now. Where is the core of this hive? Where can I seal it?" She opened her eyes, just barely, and then she reached toward him with one claw. It didn't touch him, but it touched his mind. A flash of light. A memory. He saw a massive glowing chamber buried deep beneath the hive, a power source, a purifier, a last resort system. She had never used it. She had been waiting for someone like him. Raylan stood. He knew where to go, but he also knew the risk. He might not return. And if he failed, those children would die, and maybe something worse would rise in their place. He took one last look at the Queen. "I'll come back," he said, and then he ran, into the dark, toward the heart of the hive. Toxic nightmare Raylan moved fast through the winding tunnels, heart pounding in his chest like a war drum. The Queen's final memory had shown him something buried deep, the purification core, a last defense, a machine that could push back the toxin flooding the hive, maybe even reverse it. But it was far below, beneath layers of collapsed tunnels, rotting biomass, and worse. The deeper he went, the darker the hive became. Even his helmet light struggled to cut through the thick mist that now floated in the air. Every breath his suit filtered was a reminder that this place was slowly dying, and so was everything inside it. Then he heard it again. A sound he couldn't explain. Not claws, not breathing, not alien. It was metallic. Footsteps. He stopped, turned his lights off, waited. A shadow passed at the far end of the tunnel, too tall to be the larvae, too thin to be part of the hive. It moved with purpose. Not hunting, patrolling. Raylan crouched against the wall and slowed his breathing. He watched through the mist as the shape disappeared around the corner. He wasn't alone down here. Someone, or something, was guarding the hive core. The Queen's memory had given him a path, but not the danger that came with it. He pushed forward, passing through parts of the hive untouched by time. The walls here were clean, almost glass-like. The air felt heavier. His suit sensors picked up radiation, heat, and artificial energy. This part of the hive wasn't natural. It had been modified, hybridized. He entered a large chamber with high walls and no ceiling. The sky above was green and hazy. Vines twisted down through the open roof like dead veins. The center stood something strange. A machine, alien but clearly built with intelligence. It pulsed with green light and let out a slow hum like a heartbeat. The purification core. But it wasn't alone. Standing near it, motionless, was a figure in black armor. Tall, inhuman, and covered in sharp ridges like a weapon turned into a person. Raylan ducked behind a wall and scanned the figure. Non-native. Species, unknown. Biotech interface detected. Active. It wasn't from the hive. It was the invader. Raylan watched as the figure walked slowly around the core, placing glowing devices onto the machinery. Sabotage. The enemy didn't just want the hive to die. They wanted to make sure it could never be reborn. Raylan gripped his weapon. He didn't want to fight, but he had no choice. The larvae would die. The Queen's sacrifice would be wasted, and something told him, if this invader succeeded, the same toxin would be used again. On Earth. Raylan activated a decoy drone and threw it down the tunnel. The enemy turned, just slightly. That was his moment. He sprinted toward the core, sliding into cover behind a support beam. The invader fired, sharp red beams slicing the air, missing by inches. Raylan returned fire. His shots bounced off the armor, but then he aimed for the floor, a weak point. The ground beneath the invader gave way, and it dropped slightly, just enough for Raylan to reach the core panel. He activated the console. The screen lit up in alien symbols. His visor began auto-translating. System failure. Emergency protocol locked. Genetic access required. He froze. Genetic access? Suddenly, the memory came back. The Queen's claw. The way it had touched his mind, she had given him something. A key. Raylan placed his hand on the scanner. It lit up green. Core activation in progress. Detoxification. Initiate Theta. Deep vibration shook the chamber. The green mist above began to swirl, violently. The machines surrounding the core came alive, pumping light and power into the walls. The toxin was being pulled out, purified. But the invader wasn't done. It screamed, a horrible high-pitched sound, and lunged at Raylan with claws. Out! Raylan raised his gun and fired point blank. The creature shrieked and staggered back. It bled black smoke, not blood. It reached for him again, but the core's pulse grew louder. A final wave of energy burst from the machine, knocking the invader into the far wall. The light grew so bright Raylan had to cover his eyes. When it faded, the enemy was gone. Nothing but ash. Minutes passed. The mist had cleared. Raylan stood near the core, breathing hard. The air was still foul, but no longer deadly. His suit alarms had stopped screaming. The larvae could live. For now. He turned back toward the tunnel. But he didn't get far before he stopped. There, lying in the shadows, was something strange. A data shard. Small. Silver. Etched with alien marks. It hadn't come from the Queen. It had come from the invader. Raylan picked it up and slipped it into his pack. He would study it later, after he saved the children. But something told him this wasn't just about one hive. This was part of something bigger, much bigger, and he had just stepped into the middle of it. The enemy's shadow Raylan climbed back through the twisted hive. Tunnels, his mind racing faster than his footsteps. The air was slowly clearing. The toxins were being pulled into the core's vents, but the danger wasn't over. Not even close. He still had the data shard. A thin sliver of alien technology taken from the enemy. It burned cold in his hand, like it was alive. The AI in his helmet had tried to scan it, but the system crashed each time. Unknown format. The AI whispered again. Warning, signal interference detected. Device contains sentient encryption. Sentient? Raylan didn't like that word. He tucked the shard away and moved faster. As he approached the nursery chamber, he feared the worst. But to his relief, the larvae were alive. Breathing. Stronger. And the Queen, barely alive, opened her eyes again. She looked at him with something new. Not desperation, not fear, but belief. She had seen what he did. Somehow, through their link, she knew. He had saved the core. But before Raylan could speak, the chamber shook violently. A deep rumble echoed from above, then another. Not footsteps, engines. From far above the hive, through thick layers of atmosphere, something was coming. The AI's voice returned, this time shaking with urgency. Incoming dropships, multiple signatures, class, unknown. Estimated time, 3 minutes. Raylan froze. This wasn't over. Whoever attacked this hive the first time was coming back to finish the job. He raced to his ship's location signal. The small craft was still parked on the upper level, half covered in fungus and toxic ash. He ran. Something strange started happening. The walls of the hive were changing. New lines of organic code shimmered across them, glowing like veins of light. The Queen's connection to him must have triggered some ancient system, maybe something older than even she knew. As Raylan passed a chamber filled with cocooned eggs, a strange whisper touched his mind, a warning or a memory. They were never after us, they were after you. He paused. What? The whisper came again, not from the Queen, but from somewhere older, a voice buried in the hive's bones. They feared what we could become together. Raylan felt a chill. Together? Was that what this was really about? Not war, but prevention? Was this hive once meant to join with humanity? The Queen had chosen to trust him, had gifted him with her legacy. Maybe the invader saw that coming, and tried to stop it before it began. Back at the surface, Raylan reached his ship and prepared emergency liftoff. But then he looked back. The Mu. Larvae. He couldn't leave without them. He sprinted back into the hive. He sealed each of them into stasis pods, 6 in total, still weak but alive. Each pod was warm to the touch. Raylan felt their tiny minds reaching out to him, like fragile thoughts trying to understand the world. But he didn't have time to explain. He carried the pods to the ship just as the sky broke open. The first enemy dropship appeared above the clouds. It was sharp, black, and made no sound. It hovered with silent hatred. Raylan launched his ship, angling hard through the trees and out into the upper atmosphere. The enemy chased him, but now he was flying with something more than just data or life. He was carrying the future, and they knew it. Far above the planet in the cold vacuum of space, Raylan's ship shook violently. Red lights blinked. The AI screamed warnings as the enemy caught up. He activated stealth mode. The ship's light dimmed, the engines shifted frequency. The vessel disappeared into the darkness, but not completely. A small scout ship still followed him. That's when Raylan made a risky choice. He inserted the alien shard into his ship's mainframe. Instantly, everything changed. His display turned green. Symbols raced across the screens. A new system took over. Part alien, part human. The ship moved like never before. Faster, smarter. The AI fused with the shard's intelligence, and a new voice spoke. You are marked by the Hive. You are not prey. You are guardian. Raylan's ship cut through the stars, escaping into hyperspace. The enemy disappeared behind him. But the war was just beginning. On the far side of the galaxy, aboard a silent space station carved from black ice, something watched. A tall figure stood over a glowing map of the stars, dozens of hives, human colonies, trade routes. One by one, the lights blinked red. Target escaped, a voice said behind him. The figure turned. No face, just a mask, metal fused with flesh. Let him run, the figure said coldly. Let him believe he has won. And the Queen's spawn? Asked the voice. The figure paused. They will grow, and when they do, he will bring them to us. He smiled beneath the mask. And then the real test begins. The legacy transfer Raylan floated in the quiet dark of hyperspace. Stars blinked in and out through the cockpit glass like ancient ghosts. His ship, patched together with alien code and human steel, hummed softly, alive in a way it hadn't been before. Behind him in the stasis chamber, 6 small pods glowed gently. Inside, the alien larvae, survivors of the poisoned hive, slept peacefully for the first time. Their minds were calm now, but Raylan could feel them. Not with sensors, not with machines, with something else. A connection. It had started the moment the Queen touched him. Not just a telepathic imprint, something deeper, something inside his blood. He hadn't told the AI. He hadn't told himself. But he knew. He wasn't fully human anymore. He hadn't been since the moment she gave him her final gift, and now it was waking up. The pain started in his spine. It was a slow burn at first, like a fever, then a deep pull, as if his bones were being rewritten. Raylan dropped to the floor, shaking, biting back a scream. His vision blurred. His heartbeat stuttered. The AI voice flickered in his helmet. Warning, neural spike detected. Blood chemistry altered. DNA. Changing. Then everything went dark. He opened his eyes hours later. His body was cold. But something was different. He moved faster, breathed deeper. His senses were sharper. He could hear the hum of the ship's circuits. He could feel the ship's thoughts. Just like the Hive. Raylan stumbled to a mirror. His face was still his. But not exactly. His eyes glowed faintly green in the dark. His veins pulsed with something more than blood. The Queen hadn't just saved her children. She had made him one of them. In the ship's medical bay, Raylan accessed a private log. It was encrypted, hidden even from the AI. He needed answers, so he did what he feared most. He played back the Queen's final psychic imprint, the memory she left buried in his mind. What he saw changed everything. A distant world, not Earth, not the Hive, a planet full of light, where alien queens and humans walked together long ago. Before history, before memory, before war, there had been peace once. A treaty, a shared future between two species, one with emotion and creativity, the other with ancient knowledge and genetic power. But something had broken that future. A betrayal, a faction, alien, pure, and ruthless, had rebelled. They believed mixing with humans would destroy their genetic perfection, so they launched a war in secret. They erased records, burned hives, wiped memory. That faction still lived, and they were hunting every hive that dared reconnect with humans, just like the one Raylan found. And now, just like him, because the Queen had made him the bridge they feared most, a living fusion of human mind and hive legacy, the last of its kind. As the ship glided into orbit above a neutral space station, Raylan felt a sharp pulse from one of the stasis pods. He rushed to the chamber. One of the larvae was awake, small, fragile, but its eyes locked onto his, and he felt it. A thread of thought, not words, not speech, emotion, recognition. The child didn't just know him, it trusted him. Father, the AI translated softly, based on the brainwave patterns. The creature identifies you as its parent. Raylan stepped back, stunned. He had saved them. Now they were his, not just biologically, responsibly. And then, alarms. Warning, external scan detected. Cloaked vessel in range. Raylan ran to the cockpit. A stealth ship had exited hyperspace. No lights, no signals, no weapons active. But it was there. Watching. Waiting. They found me, he whispered. But they didn't attack. They wanted something else. Confirmation. To see if the Hive Queen had succeeded, if the legacy had been transferred, if Raylan was now a threat. He powered up his weapons. But the AI hesitated. New protocol unlocked, it said. Hive instincts engaged. Passive defense recommended. Raylan didn't fire. Instead, he let the larvae's mind guide him. He projected a message, not with words, but thought. Are alive, we are evolving, and we will protect what's ours. The enemy ship stayed a few seconds longer, then vanished, retreating, but not surrendering. Raylan sat in silence, staring out into the dark. He was no longer just a pilot, no longer just a man. He was something new, part of a dying past and a rising future. The Queen had chosen him not for his strength, but his heart. She saw a man willing to risk everything for lives not his own, and now, those lives were in his hands, but deep in the back of his mind, something darker stirred. A memory not his, a warning buried in alien code. When the legacy grows strong, they will come again. With fire, with silence, with extinction. Raylan clenched his fists. Let them come. He would be ready. The escape plan. The stars looked peaceful, silent, still, but Raylan knew better. Nothing in space stayed quiet for long, especially when something was hunting you. His ship floated just outside the neutral space station known as Haven's Edge. It was a halfway point between systems. No weapons allowed, no governments in charge. A place for smugglers, wanderers, and people who didn't want to be found. It was the perfect place to disappear. But this time, disappearing wasn't enough. Raylan stepped away from the glass viewport and stared at the 6 alien stasis pods behind him. The larvae had survived the hive. They had survived the toxin. They had survived the invaders. But they would not survive another trap. And he had just walked into one. The station looked empty on arrival, but as Raylan docked, something felt wrong. Too quiet. No welcome. No chatter. No scanning drones. The docking bay was dark, lit only by flickering emergency lights. The air smelled of ozone and burnt circuitry. "Something's wrong," he whispered. The AI answered softly. "Life signs detected. Minimal. 8 humans, 1 unknown, all armed." Raylan checked the pods. The children were asleep. Their minds calm. He powered up a small mobile life support cradle and loaded 3 of the 6 pods. He couldn't carry all of them at once, but he had a plan, or at least the start of one. He would need time and a distraction. The station's corridors were silent except for his boots. He pushed the cradle slowly, keeping his weapon drawn. The place had once been a hub for trade and black market repairs. Now it felt like a tomb. Walls scorched, doors left open, supplies scattered. Then a voice echoed from overhead speakers. "Raylan Voss." He stopped. The voice was calm, confident. "We know what you're carrying. You've seen things no human was meant to see." He didn't answer. The voice continued. "You're not just carrying survivors. You're carrying a weapon. Evolution. Rebellion." Raylan grit his teeth. "Who are you?" Silence. Then a new voice. Soft, female, strangely familiar. "Don't you remember me, Raylan?" He froze. It was Captain Yara Quinn. She had gone missing 3 years ago, vanished during a deep space recon mission. Everyone assumed she was dead, but now her voice sounded different, like it was being filtered through a machine. Raylan spoke quietly, cautiously. "What happened to you?" "I adapted," she said. "And then I joined them." Gunfire erupted 2 corridors ahead. Raylan ducked and rolled the pod cradle into a supply room, sealing the door. His pulse spiked. So this was it. They had reached the station first. The enemy wasn't just alien anymore. They had humans working with them. Worse. Some were hybrids. Half human, half alien. Just like Raylan. But unlike him, they had chosen the other side. Twisted, controlled, willing to erase everything they once were. The voice returned, now colder. "You think you saved them, but you only delayed the end." Raylan stared at the larvae through the pod glass. One of them twitched in its sleep, sensing the danger. Sensing him. He whispered back, "Then I'll delay it again. And again. Until you're gone." Raylan activated his emergency comm link and rerouted it to the AI core. He gave it a single order: split flight. The ship AI responded, confirming, fake signal generating, clone ship launched. Back on the ship, a decoy pod fired from the lower dock, a stealth escape vessel, carrying false life signs and matching data. The enemy moved instantly. Their scans locked onto the decoy. A ship launched after it at full burn. Raylan smiled grimly. One distraction. Now time for phase 2. He powered up a pulse mine and rolled it into the hallway. It exploded in a burst of light and sound. Non-lethal, but loud enough to trigger panic. He ran, back to the docking bay. He reloaded the remaining 3 pods into the mobile cradle and pushed them hard toward a backup ship, an old runner-class freighter hidden behind scrap walls. He entered, sealed the hatch, but someone was waiting inside. Yara. Not human anymore. Her skin was pale, laced with faint green veins. Her eyes glowed dimly, just like his. "You can't run forever, Raylan," she said. He aimed his weapon. "I'm not running," he replied. "I'm protecting something worth dying for." She stepped forward. "They'll use you, just like they used me." Raylan didn't flinch. "I wasn't used. I was chosen." She laughed, cold and hollow. "Then prove it." She lunged. They fought in close quarters on her brutal fast. 2 enhanced beings locked in primal conflict. Her strength was monstrous, but Raylan's instincts were sharper, Hive-enhanced, future-born. He slammed her into the engine core. Sparks flew. She staggered, screamed, collapsed. Raylan dragged her body out. He could have ended her, but he didn't, because somewhere, deep inside her corrupted mind, he saw the old Yara, still fighting, still trapped. The freighter launched just as the enemy ship returned. Too late. Raylan disappeared into hyperspace once again, the 6 larvae secured behind him. But this time, the station exploded behind him. A warning. The war wasn't in shadows anymore, it had begun. Across the galaxy, Hive signals started to flicker back to life. Old codes, buried genetics. Raylan wasn't the only hybrid now. He was just the first and they would come for him, but he would be ready, because he wasn't running. He was building a future. One they couldn't erase. The human hivekeeper. Raylan stood alone at the edge of a newborn world. The planet was barren. Dust storms rolled across cracked stone. The sky was a deep, rusted red. No cities, no life, no signals, just silence. And that was why he had chosen it. The perfect place to build something new. A home, a sanctuary, a hive. Behind him, the 6 alien children, now in accelerated growth cycles, slept inside reinforced pods, protected beneath the surface in a hidden chamber he had carved using scavenged alien tech and human engineering. They weren't infants anymore. Their minds had developed faster than any human child, and stronger. They were beginning to speak, not with voices, but with thought, and every thought came through him. He wasn't just their protector anymore. He was their translator, their teacher, their link to humanity, and the hive knew it. Because the hive now lived inside him too. His mind was no longer just his own. When he closed his eyes, he saw more than memories. He saw code. He saw ancient lines of thought, old queen knowledge stretching back thousands of cycles, patterns of evolution, genetic blueprints, lost hives, forgotten truths, and war. Always war. Every time a hive tried to grow, the enemy came. Raylan now understood why. Because the hive wasn't just powerful, it was hope, a model of perfect cooperation, of emotional unity, a society without lies, without betrayal, without division. To some, that was terrifying. To those who craved control, it was a threat, and now, Raylan carried that threat in his blood. He had become the human hive keeper, the first of his kind, and the galaxy had taken notice. The message came 3 days after the larvae awakened, not on a human frequency, not alien, either. It came from a council ship, one of the old interstellar powers that operated in shadows, managing wars and diplomacy from behind the scenes. The message was short. Raylan Voss, we request a neutral parley. Location Sector 9G, time 48 hours. No weapons, no hive bonded. Raylan stared at the message. No children, no powers, no defense. They wanted to talk to the man, not the hive, not the monster they feared he was becoming, but maybe the one they hoped he still was. He arrived at the meeting site in an unmarked shuttle. The place was artificial, a floating black platform orbiting a dead star. Time felt slower here. The very air buzzed with authority. 3 delegates waited for him. 1 human, 1 alien, and 1 hybrid with a mechanical face and emotionless voice. They did not smile. Raylan Voss, the hybrid, spoke. You are here under no flag, no nation protects you. No system claims you. Do you understand what you represent? Raylan said nothing. The human delegate stepped forward. You are carrying something that does not belong to your kind. Raylan looked him in the eye. No, he said. I was chosen. Your kind just wasn't brave enough to accept it. The room went cold. The alien delegate, tall and thin with 4 eyes and skin like obsidian, finally spoke. The legacy of the hive has been declared extinct, forbidden, genetically unstable, psychically dangerous. Raylan took a breath, then placed something on the table, a data crystal, The same one the enemy invader dropped back in the hive. You labeled them dangerous because they saw a future you couldn't control, a bond between species you couldn't understand. You feared unity because you built your power on division. He leaned forward. But I've seen what that unity looks like. He gestured toward the crystal. The queen left her memories with me, her pain, her peace, her children. You can't kill that. You can't erase it. Silence. Then the hybrid delegate said one final thing. Then war will come. And when it does, no world will shelter you. Not human. Not hive. You will stand, alone. Raylan smiled. No. I'll stand with 6. The next few weeks passed in fire and steel. Enemy ships appeared across systems. Small at first, then larger. Silent. Testing defenses. Looking for him. But Raylan didn't run. He sent. A signal not with machines but with his mind. A hive burst carried on neural resonance, and something ancient responded. Old hive ruins reactivated. Dormant queens began to stir. Across the galaxy, hybrids, long hidden, feared, or hunted, began to awaken. The hive wasn't extinct. It had been sleeping, and now it was rising. Back on the Red World, Raylan watched the 6 children play under the twin moons. They were stronger now, they're growing faster than science could explain, but not dangerous, not cruel. They were curious. They built things with their minds. They shared dreams while awake. They were what humanity could be if it let go of fear. Raylan felt a presence beside him. He turned. One of the children, taller now, perhaps 10 human years in form, looked up at him with eyes glowing softly. "What are we?" she asked in a voice that was barely a whisper. Raylan knelt down. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You," he said, "are the bridge, the dream, the truth no one wanted to believe in." She smiled. "Will they come for us?" Raylan looked up at the sky, where stars began to shift. "They already are." He stood tall. "But next time, we won't be hiding." He turned back, toward the hive entrance, where old queen technology was awakening under his hands, walls pulsing with new life, systems rebuilding, weapons shaping from memory and mind. The hive would stand, not as a nest of monsters, but as a beacon, a future born of blood, love, and survival, and at its heart, not a queen, but a human, a guardian, the first and last hive keeper of Earth.